They called him the ghost of the valley, a man who moved through the world like a whisper, leaving no trace but the unnerving feeling that you were being watched by something ancient and powerful. This wasn't a story of magic or fantasy. This was the story of a man who was cast out, silenced, and left for dead by a world that values noise over substance. And in that silence, he found a power so profound, so dangerous, that the very people who exiled him would one day beg for his mercy. You see, society has taught you that your voice is your strength, that to be seen, you must be loud. To be respected, you must be at the center of the conversation. But what if that's a lie? What if the greatest power isn't found in the roar, but in the stillness that precedes it? What if the ability to be invisible, to be underestimated, to be utterly and completely self-contained is the most lethal weapon you could ever possess? You've felt it, haven't you? That gnawing feeling of being on the outside looking in. The frustration of speaking, only to have your words evaporate into the cacophony of the crowd. You've been talked over, ignored, dismissed. You've poured your heart and soul into something, only to see the credit claimed by someone with a louder voice and a brighter smile. And in those moments, a seed of resentment is planted. A quiet, cold fury that you swallow down because you believe you have no other choice. You retreat into yourself, not by choice but by necessity. Your silence becomes a shield. Your observation becomes a coping mechanism. But you're here today because a part of you knows that shield can be reforged into a sword. You've stumbled upon a truth that few ever will. Exile is not a punishment. It is a forge. And the silence you've been forced into is not a weakness. It is the training ground for a power so absolute it can rewrite the rules of the world you were cast out from. Stay with me, and I will show you how to walk the silent exile's path. I will show you how to turn your isolation into an unbreakable fortress of the mind, how to transform observation into terrifying insight, and how to build a presence so immense that your silence will command more respect than their loudest proclamations. This is not about revenge. It is about reclamation. This is the art of becoming so dangerously powerful in your own right that the world that once rejected you has no choice but to orbit your silent gravity. The journey begins not with a step, but with a realization, a fundamental shift in perspective that redefines the very walls of your perceived prison. You must understand that the exile imposed upon you by others is a gift. It is the stripping away of the unnecessary, the loud, the distracting. When the world turns its back on you, it gives you the one thing it can never have for itself, an unfiltered view of its own machinery. The man who would become a specter of power was once named Kalen. He wasn't born a warrior or a sage. He was an architect's son, a young man with a mind that saw patterns others missed. He spoke with precision, not passion, and in a city that celebrated boisterous charisma, his quiet intelligence was mistaken for arrogance, his thoughtful pauses for weakness. He proposed a radical new design for the city's aqueducts, a system that was more efficient, more sustainable, but it was complex. It required patience to understand. At the city council meeting, a charismatic rival named Lucian, a man who spoke in soaring rhetoric and empty promises, presented a flashier, simpler, and deeply flawed design. Kalen tried to explain the long-term dangers of Lucian's plan, the structural instabilities, the inevitable collapse. But his calm, measured arguments were drowned out by Lucian's booming voice and easy charm. The council, swayed by popular opinion and the path of least resistance, didn't just reject Kalen's proposal, they ridiculed him. Lucian, seizing the moment, painted Kalen as an elitist, a doomsayer who sought to confuse and control them with needless complexity. He was publicly shamed, his family's name tarnished. He was ostracized, effectively exiled within his own city walls. No one would hire him. Old friends would cross the street to avoid him. The invitations stopped. The friendly greetings turned to cold stares. He was a ghost in his own home. In the beginning, this forced solitude was a torment. The The silence was a constant reminder of his failure, of his rejection. The echoes of Lucien's laughter and the council's dismissive scorn played on a loop in his mind. He was trapped in a prison of humiliation. But then, one day, sitting in his empty study, staring at the useless blueprints of his perfect aqueduct, something shifted. The relentless noise of seeking approval, of trying to be heard, was gone. For the first time, there was only silence. And in that silence, he began to see. He wasn't just Kalen, the failed architect. He was an observer. He was free from the obligation to perform, to persuade, to participate in the charade. This is your first task. Embrace the gift of the periphery. Stop seeing your exclusion as a punishment and start seeing it as a vantage point. The man in the arena is too busy fighting to notice the shifting ground beneath his feet. The politician is too busy speaking to hear the whispers in the corners. The celebrity is too blinded by the spotlight to see the shadows where the real power brokers operate. But you, the exile, you see everything. Your first act of power is to consciously and gratefully accept your position on the outside. It is your watchtower. From here, you will learn the rhythms of the world you've been removed from, the patterns of ambition, the tells of deceit, the subtle currents of influence that are invisible to those caught in the storm. Do not waste your energy banging on the door that has been closed to you. Turn your back to it and begin studying the architecture of the entire building. This is the first step on the path to dangerous power, the transmutation of shame into perception. Once you have accepted your position as the observer, the next phase begins, the forging of a mind that is impervious to the opinions of others. Your silence must become more than an absence of noise. It must become a fortress. The world you were cast out from will not leave you be entirely. It will send emissaries of doubt, whispers of your own inadequacy, designed to pull you back into the cycle of seeking validation. They will call you strange, bitter, forgotten. These are the phantoms at the gate, and your mind must be the impenetrable wall they break against. Kalen, in his solitude, was haunted. He'd walk the city at night, a hooded figure, and watch the construction of Lucien's aqueduct. He saw the shortcuts, the use of inferior materials, the cracks already forming in the foundation. Every flaw he saw was a vindication, but it was also a source of torment. A part of him, the part that was still tethered to his old life, screamed to warn them, to prove he was right. It was the desperate craving for the world to admit its mistake. He would return to his study, his mind a tempest of "I told you so," and if only they had listened. This craving for their validation was a chain, pulling him back toward the very people who had cast him out. He was still their prisoner. The change came during a fierce winter storm. A section of the new aqueduct, not yet even completed, collapsed under the strain. It was a minor incident, quickly covered up by Lucien and the council, but Kalen saw it happen. He stood in the freezing rain, watching the mess of splintered wood and crumbling mortar, and he felt nothing. The frantic need for vindication was gone. The anger had cooled. He simply observed, analyzed the failure point, and turned and walked home. In that moment, he had severed the chain. He had realized that their failure was not his success. Their opinion, their admission of error, their validation, it was all irrelevant. His work, his knowledge, his truth existed independently of their acceptance. He had been right, and knowing he was right was enough. This is the second discipline you must master, the art of internal validation. Your self-worth must be a closed system. It cannot be dependent on external praise or recognition. It must be forged in the fire of your own standards, your own integrity, your own relentless pursuit of truth. How do you achieve this? You build, in secret, in silence. Kalen did not try to publish his findings about the aqueduct. He did not shout from the rooftops. Instead, he began to fill his study with new work. He designed buildings that could withstand any storm, irrigation systems that could turn deserts green, city layouts that fostered community and security instead of division and chaos. He filled countless journals not with complaints or grievances, but with knowledge. He studied engineering, philosophy, military strategy, human psychology. He became a master of his craft and a dozen other crafts for an audience of one, himself. The opinions of the councilmen became like the chirping of crickets in the night, audible, but utterly insignificant to the work of the moon and stars. Your exile is your opportunity to build your arsenal. Read the books they haven't read. Learn the skills they don't have time to learn. Study your field so deeply that you become its master, not for a title or a promotion, but for the sake of mastery itself. When you know with absolute certainty that you have done the work, that your understanding is profound, the need for anyone else to acknowledge it withers and dies. Your silence stops being a reaction to the world and becomes a reflection of your own self-sufficiency. This is the silent strength that begins to radiate from you. People don't know why, but they feel it. They sense a self-possession, a gravity, that their world of fleeting praise and fickle criticism cannot touch. They may still call you an exile, but a tremor of doubt will enter their voice. They are looking at a fortress, and they are beginning to realize they have no way in. With a mind fortified against the need for external validation, you are ready for the third and most active phase of this journey, the cultivation of dangerous observation. Your vantage point on the periphery is not for passive watching, it is for active intelligence gathering. The silent man who sees everything is a threat not because he is quiet, but because he understands. He connects the dots that no one else sees. The power you are building is not the power to shout, but the power to know. To know what people truly want, what they truly fear, and what they will do next. Kalen, no longer tormented by his past, began to study the city not as a citizen but as a strategist. He sat in taverns, not drinking but listening. He walked the markets, not shopping but observing. He stood in the shadows of the great plazas and watched the dance of power. Because he wanted nothing from these people, not their approval, not their conversation, not their money. He was invisible. And in his invisibility, he saw the truth. He saw the merchant who paid bribes to the city guard. He heard the whispers of the grain shipments that were being secretly rerouted by a corrupt councilman. He noticed the subtle fear in the eyes of the stonemasons working on Lucian's aqueduct, the way they never stood directly beneath their own work. He saw the networks of debt, of secret loyalties, of hidden resentments that formed the true foundation of the city. While others were mesmerized by Lucian's speeches about unity and progress, Kalen was mapping the city's fractures. He wasn't looking for gossip. He was looking for leverage. He was identifying the load-bearing walls of the social structure. He learned that what people say is a performance. What they do, especially when they think no one is watching, is the reality. The ambitious councilman who preached fiscal responsibility gambled recklessly. The pious priest had a secret family in a neighboring town. The loyal captain of the guard was deeply in debt to a foreign moneylender. None of this was sought for the purpose of blackmail or petty revenge. It was collected as data. It was an exercise in understanding the true mechanics of human nature. This is your work in the shadows. You must become a student of the human condition. Detach your ego from your observations. When you watch people, do not judge them as good or bad. See them as systems of incentives and fears. What is their primary driver? Is it greed, fear of irrelevance, a desperate need for love, a lust for power? Most people are open books, but you have to be fluent in the language of their actions, not their words. Listen to what is not said in a meeting. Notice who looks at whom when a difficult question is asked. Observe who benefits from a particular decision, regardless of the stated reason for it. Your silence makes you the perfect confessional. People will forget you are there and reveal their true selves. Your lack of reaction makes you a safe harbor for information. They are not performing for you because in their eyes you are a nobody. They are simply being, and you are watching. You are learning. You are building a mental map of the invisible forces that truly govern the world. This knowledge is your hidden treasure. It is silent, it is deep, and it is far more potent than the temporary power of a title or a loud voice. The man who speaks knows what he knows, but the man who listens knows what everyone knows. This is the beginning of your dangerous power. You are no longer the exile. You are the strategist. As you accumulate this deep understanding of the world around you, you will arrive at a critical juncture. Knowledge without action is sterile. Your silence, your observation, your fortified mind, they are all components of a weapon that is now ready to be deployed. The fourth discipline is the art of precise and deliberate action. The silent exile does not act often. He does not waste motion. But when he does act, his intervention is so precise, so impactful, that it changes the entire landscape. It is the difference between a child splashing in the water and a master archer releasing a single, perfectly aimed arrow. For years, Kalen did nothing. He watched the city's slow decay under the surface of its prosperous facade. Lucian's aqueduct was completed, a monument to his charisma and the city's foolishness. It leaked. It required constant, expensive repairs. The diverted funds had weakened other essential services. The city was a beautiful fruit, rotten at the core. Kalen's moment came not when he chose it, but when it presented itself. A neighboring city-state, a long-time rival, began to amass troops on their border. They were known for their ruthless military and their brilliant chief strategist. The council in Kalen's city panicked. They held public meetings, gave rousing speeches, and raised taxes for a new army, but their response was chaotic and fearful. Lucian, a master of words but a novice in crisis, offered only blustering reassurances. Kalen, the silent observer, had been studying this rival for years. He had read their philosophical texts, analyzed their battle formations from historical accounts, and understood the psychology of their leader. He knew they were not preparing for a full-scale invasion. That was not their way. They were masters of psychological warfare. They would use a surgical strike to cripple their opponent's morale, forcing a favorable treaty without a costly war. While his city's leaders prepared for a siege, Kalen identified the true target, the city's main grain silo, located just outside the walls, poorly defended and fed by a single, vulnerable bridge. Its destruction wouldn't starve the city immediately, but it would signal an impossible-to-hide incompetence. It would create mass panic and shatter the people's faith in their leaders, making them ripe for surrender. Kalen did not go to the council. They would not listen. He did not write a public warning. He would be dismissed as a fearmonger. Instead, he acted. Using a small portion of the money his family had left him, he anonymously hired a small, trusted team of out-of-work stonemasons, men he had observed for years, men who were quiet, skilled, and resentful of the current leadership. He didn't give them a grand speech. He simply presented his calculations. He showed them the bridge's structural weaknesses and the enemy's most likely path. He gave them a simple task. Under the cover of a few nights, reinforce the bridge's supports and subtly sabotage the road a mile before it, making it impassable for heavy siege equipment. He was a ghost, giving a quiet, logical instruction. They, recognizing the truth in his analysis, agreed. The attack came exactly as Kalen had predicted. A small, elite force bypassed the city's main defenses, heading for the silo. They reached the sabotaged road and were forced to abandon their heaviest equipment. When they reached the bridge, expecting to overwhelm its meager defenses, they found it fortified. The delay was only a few hours, but it was enough. A passing city patrol, alerted by the noise, sounded the alarm. The enemy, their element of surprise lost, retreated. The city celebrated. They hailed the patrol as heroes. The council declared it a great victory, a sign of their strength. No one ever knew about Kalen. No one knew that a silent, exiled architect had saved them. He did not need them to know. The outcome was the only validation he required. This is the nature of your power. It is not about being in the spotlight. It is about shaping events from the shadows. It is about knowing the one small lever that can move a mountain. Your actions should be rare, economical, and decisive. While others are busy with a flurry of activity, you will wait, watch, and understand. And when the perfect moment of intervention arrives, you will act with such quiet efficiency that the world may not even know you were there. They will only see the result. They will call it luck or fate or a miracle. You will call it strategy. You are the ghost in the machine, the unseen hand on the rudder. This is a power far greater than the fleeting applause sought by men like Lucian. It is the power to shape reality itself. With the ability to act decisively from the shadows, you enter the final stage of your transformation. This is where your silent power becomes truly dangerous, for it begins to bend the world to your will without a single command. The fifth discipline is the mastery of silent gravity. A person who needs nothing from others, who is a master of their own inner world, who sees the truth of things, and who acts with devastating precision, develops a presence. It is an aura of unshakable calm and profound depth. It is a silence that is not empty but full of knowledge, of control, of power held in reserve. And this is intensely magnetic and deeply unsettling to those who live in the noisy, superficial world. After the averted crisis, something in the city began to shift. The initial celebration faded, and a quiet unease set in. People had seen how close they had come to disaster. They began to notice the cracks in Lucian's rhetoric. They saw the ever-leaking aqueduct not as a monument, but as a symbol of his incompetence. A few of the more astute members of the city began to seek out the quiet man who was always right. The stonemasons who had worked on the bridge, when asked how the patrol had been so lucky, would just shake their heads and say nothing, but they would glance towards the part of the city where Kalen lived. A young, bright military officer, frustrated by the council's ineptitude, began his own investigation into the averted attack. His search for answers led him not to the celebrated heroes but to rumors of a shadowy figure, a ghost architect, who seemed to understand the enemy better than their own generals. He found Kalen. He did not come with accusations but with questions. He sat with Kalen in his study, surrounded by maps and books and designs. He did not hear a tirade against the council. He did not hear a boast. He heard only quiet, logical analysis. He heard an understanding of the world that was so deep, so comprehensive, it was breathtaking. He left that study a changed man. He became Kalen's eyes and ears within the military. He didn't take orders. He simply listened to Kalen's analysis and then made his own, better-informed decisions. Then a wealthy merchant whose trade routes were failing due to the city's poor infrastructure sought Kalen's counsel. Then a philosopher. Then a farmer. They came not because he called them, but because they were drawn to his silence, to the palpable sense of competence that radiated from him. He never sought power. He never raised his voice. He never asked for a title or a position. He simply answered their questions with the unvarnished truth he had spent years acquiring. He became the city's silent center of gravity. Lucian and the council were still in the palace, giving speeches, wearing the robes of power. But the real power was coalescing in a dusty, forgotten study with an exiled architect. They held the titles, but Kalen held the influence. His silence was now more powerful than their decrees. A word from him, a quiet suggestion passed through the military officer or the merchant, had more weight than a law passed by the council. He had become dangerous not by challenging the existing power structure, but by becoming a more reliable alternative. He had become the one who knew. This is the ultimate expression of the exile's path. You do not seize power, you become it. Your strength, your self-reliance, your deep knowledge, and your precise actions create a gravitational field. People who are tired of the noise, the lies, and the incompetence will be drawn to you. They will seek your counsel not because you demand it, but because your quiet competence is a beacon in a sea of chaos. Your task is not to market yourself. It is to become so undeniably effective, so rooted in truth, that you become essential. Let your work speak for you. Let your calm demeanor be your authority. Let your rare and precise actions be your legacy. You will find that true power doesn't need to announce itself. It is felt. It is sought. It is the quiet man in the room whom everyone, eventually, turns to listen to, even if he hasn't said a word. The world that exiled you will one day find itself at your door, not to offer you a pardon but to ask for your help. And in that moment, you will have completed the journey. From silent exile to the dangerous, silent center of everything. So what does this mean for you now in your life? You are not in an ancient city and your rival is not a man named Lucian, but the dynamics are the same. You have been sidelined, ignored, underestimated. You are in a self-imposed or externally forced exile. Stop fighting it. Stop lamenting it. See it for the training ground it is. First, accept your vantage point. See the beauty and strategic advantage of the periphery. Let go of the burning need to be in the center of a room that doesn't appreciate you. Your freedom begins the moment you stop craving their acceptance. Second, build your mental fortress. Make your self-worth a product of your own effort and your own standards. Do the work. Read the books. Hone the skills. Become a master for yourself. Their opinion of you is not your business. Your opinion of you is everything. Third, become a master observer. Watch people. Understand their motives, their fears, their hidden desires. Learn the unspoken language of power. See the patterns they miss. Do this not to be a cynic, but to be a realist. Knowledge of the terrain is essential for anyone who wishes to navigate it successfully. Fourth, when you act, be the archer, not the splasher. Let your interventions be rare, strategic, and impactful. Solve a problem no one else could. Provide an insight that changes the game. Do it quietly. The outcome is your reward, not the applause. And finally, cultivate your silent gravity. Let your competence and your self-possession be your calling card. Do not chase influence, attract it. Become the source of calm, rational, effective thought. The world is starving for it. People will find you. And when they do, your past as an exile will not be a scar. It will be the source of your legend. This path is not easy. It is a path of solitude, of discipline, of turning inward when every instinct screams to lash out. But it is a path to a power that cannot be given and cannot be taken away. It is the power that is forged in the silent fires of the soul. The world may have cast you out, but in doing so, they have unwittingly sent you on the one journey that can lead to true strength. They thought they were sending you into the wilderness to die. They have no idea that you are the one who learns to command the wolves. Now, go and walk your path. Embrace the silence, and let them wonder what kind of power you are building in the shadows. If this journey resonates with the path you find yourself on, if you feel that pull towards a quieter, deeper form of strength, then you are not alone. There is a community of us walking this same road. Subscribe and join the MidQuest Chronicles. Share in the comments the moment you realized your silence could be a source of power. Your story is part of our story. We are the architects in the shadows, the observers on the periphery, the ones forging a new kind of power. Your journey has just begun, and the next chapter will be about weaponizing your focus in a world designed to shatter it. You won't want to miss it. Become unrecognizable. Become powerful. I'll be waiting for you.